From CNN as well, 33 states out of money to fund jobless benefits. And it says that basically there's a total of 33 states, as well as the Virgin Islands, which have depleted their funds and borrowed more than $38.7 billion to continue funding their jobless benefits. California, our state, has the most, totaling $8.4 billion, which has been borrowed from the government. And notes in the article that financing experts had suggested to states that they build up a stock of money during good times to help pay for this. But all of these states, the majority of them, who adopted a pay-as-you-go philosophy, are now have no money and are borrowing completely from the federal government, and didn't have any money saved up from when the economy was at a good rate. So it's really basic economics here.
Yeah, that actually connects to the census too, because they're trying to argue like, oh, well, you can get more funding from the federal government if there's a good number of all the people.
And the reason that the reason we don't have any money is because the government was screwing up in the first place,
exactly.
And because they were allowing this type of nefarious activity to go on by banksters and all the other criminals.
Yeah, they pretty much given you a shovel and told you to start digging and to keep digging no matter what happens. Oh, keep digging, and using the federal government, relying on them, is just not going to get us anywhere. I think that's been proven if you open your eyes. Next we have from Metropolitan News Enterprise, use of taser on pregnant woman not on constitutional court rules. For going apparently 32 in a 20-mile-per-hour zone, this woman was tased 3 times after pain compliance was applied to her for not signing a ticket and ended up being ordered out of the vehicle. She wouldn't comply. And it's really crazy that this is constitutional. It seems like it's pretty much a massive abuse of that device. It actually kind of reinforces a case in last December where the use of a taser dart caused a disoriented man to fall on his face and shatter his teeth and scrape his face up. So that was ruled unconstitutional. So it's pretty wild, these tasers, the way they're used.
Especially because they originally said they'd be used on armed people who are dangerous.
Yeah, not mom with one of their kids in the car taking them to school.
Now it's used for compliance, exactly. It's pain compliance.
Her kid turned out healthy, but it's just insanity because she and her child might have died.
From USA Today, Ohio officials tell residents to arm themselves and amid police cuts. And we're actually going to show you a little video clip here from WKYC News, which will tell you all about the situation going on in Ashtabula County.
Chris Harbin is a certified NRA instructor and compliance coordinator for Ohioans for concealed carriers. The Sheriff's Department has been cut by more than half, from 112 deputies down to 49. How can the department still function at that point?
Well, I think the point of what the judge said doesn't really have anything to do with how they can function at that point. What he was really talking about was whose responsibility is it really to provide for your safety? Even if we had budgets that were overflowing and was allowed to provide one officer per every non-law enforcement citizen in the state, we couldn't do it. We've never been anywhere in our history where we're going to have that 1-to-1 ratio. So really what the judge was talking about was it's our responsibility to provide our own safety. And by the way, he didn't just talk about being armed. If you continue with this quote, he says, be careful. Be vigilant. In other words, know what's going on around you. Have some idea of what's going on around you, and know your neighbors.
But as
those
a judge,
seem to me
Chris,
to be pretty responsible things.
As a judge, you know that people are going to latch on to the part where you say, arm yourselves. That's the lead. Is that irresponsible without first saying, hey, be responsible, educate yourselves on guns, do the background check, police one another? Is it irresponsible?
Well, he did. Well, it's of course responsible. Coming from someone who is in law enforcement in the state of Ohio, a judge has that right to do that. And our experience in Ohio, with over 160,000 people having gotten concealed carry licenses, we know that our experience proves that citizens can be responsible. He does go on to talk about getting training and being aware of it. And look, if people in Ashtabula County follow the judge's advice, not only will Ashtabula County be the largest county in Ohio, but very soon it'll be the safest.
Chris, we only have 10 seconds. Has what the judge said driven up the purchases of firearms in your county?
Well, what I've been able to find out is it's driven up purchases of ammo, but purchases of firearms has been pretty steady over the last 8 months, 12 months, and you know, people that are showing interest in getting concealed handgun licenses, that continues to be steady.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, Allie, women and couples have been probably the most interested parties recently as well.
I did read that.
Next up from the New York Times, we have colleague disputes case against anthrax suspect. This guy Bruce Ivins took the fall pretty much for the anthrax letters that were mailed to people that were dissenters against the Patriot Act, which is, I mean, it's just pretty obvious what the intents, the means, motive, and opportunity kind of here. But anyways, this guy was a friend of Ivins who was found hanging, I believe. Suicided is what you could call it. He was, I think, put in a psychiatric hospital and was found dead later. So pretty much he took the fall for the anthrax, and all of his friends want to clear his name and the name of their lab. He says that no one believes it among senior scientists. His friend's name is Henry S. Hine, and he says it would have taken at least a year of intensive work using the equipment at the Army lab, and that biological containment measures were inadequate to prevent spores from floating out, and you'd have dead animals or dead people. And pretty much the FBI declined to comment, which is no surprise. Usually you have nothing to say about something which is pretty clearly sketchy. But accusing Dr. Ivins of the attacks, Hines said, was like tracing a murder to the clerk at a sporting goods shop who sold the bullets. Whoever did this is still running around out there. I truly believe that.
From NBC, a math tutor uses numbers to fight a red light camera ticket. And Mike Mogul, essentially, he challenged the ticket on Monday, and a special magistrate dropped it when the county conceded that the yellow light wasn't long enough. The county guidelines specified it has to be 4.5 seconds, and he went out and measured it, he said, 15 times with a stopwatch, and only had 3.8 seconds. And because of that, the yellow light was ruled not long enough, and his ticket was dropped, and they were urging anybody else who may have had a similar ticket to come forward, and they could also get it dropped. Next article is from the Washington Post. 2005 destruction of interrogation tapes caused concern at CIA emails show. 92 videotapes documenting the harsh interrogation of terrorism suspects at secret CIA prisons were basically destroyed back in 2005. They were taken in 2002, and it's gone all the way up to CIA Director Porter Goss at the time, who agreed with the decision and knew about it. And they even say in here, one of the deputies says, the heat from destroying is nothing compared to what it would be if the tapes ever got into the public domain. They would make us look terrible. It would be devastating to us. So they would rather destroy these tapes of them torturing people rather than let us see them. You know, they're not going to show them out there because of how horrid they are, I'm sure. I mean, imagine if it took these guys who are running CIA black sites to destroy the videos. Imagine what's on those things.
Yeah,
You know?
well, considering things like Operation Echelon, where they have a database stores like all sorts of electronic data, and basically everything that travels through the public infrastructure for communications, like there's probably copies of this stuff too for them, but it's just like, how high is your clearance? From wearechange.org, more U.S. military personnel have taken their own lives than have died in action, about 6,000 a year. And the article's conclusion pretty much says that Obama is committing to wars without end. How soul-destroying is that for a grunt holed up in a bunker with his young family back home, probably telling him that they've just signed up for food stamps? These wars are nothing but a desperate pathological bid by a dying power to salvage its crumbling empire. An empire that enriches a tiny elite and impoverishes the majority. Is it any wonder that many of them simply lose the will to live?
And also, they're being medicated. Here from the Army Times, medicating the military. At least 1 in 6 service members is on some sort of psychiatric drug, either for depression or for nightmares or for epilepsy or some type of a thing for headaches. And a former Navy psychiatrist, Dr. Grace Jackson, actually admits and says, she says, it's really a large-scale experiment. We're experimenting with changing people's cognition and behavior. And, you know, that is literally what these people are engaged in. It is a large experiment to them, and when you join the military, you basically become one of the, you know, lab rats in that experiment, essentially.
The next story from Discovery News, Discovery.com. Magnets can manipulate morality. Magnetic fields targeting the moral center of the brain could scramble our sense of right and wrong. This is interesting because there's the HART project, which we have up in Alaska, which has fields of radio antenna that can generate fields and whatnot, as our guest spoke about. Easily that could be used probably to put a sense of complacency, or maybe make us inclined to judge outcomes and not intentions, as this story implies is possible. It says it would be more difficult for people to separate innocent intentions from harmful outcomes. And so the question is could this be already being used against us now? I guess it affects a percentage of about a minimum from this study of 15%, so maybe there could be more advanced techniques. If so, we're not going to know about it. There's no reason to tell you when you're being the victim of it.
From the week, NBC's cynical mind control games, the network admits it uses behavior placement on popular shows to encourage healthy, eco-friendly habits and to sell ads. Behavior placement is the planting of subtle messages in popular TV shows to encourage certain viewer behavior. So they'll have people, throwing trash into a garbage can or doing some type of other activity that they're trying to encourage other people to do. And in doing that, they essentially are manipulating people's minds. Of course, they say it's for a good thing and it's for a good reason, so it's okay to do.
Yeah, which is ridiculous too, because all this stuff is just greenwashing, green marketing, and they're just trying to repackage and make their image look good. I mean, that's why we have like non-profits that are front groups for like Shell and whatever. Next up from CNET, we have feds raise questions about big media's piracy claims. Government Accountability Office has pretty much questioned the data used to quantify piracy isn't reliable. And so I guess it says that pirated goods replace unavailable ones in this conclusion they've made regarding this info. And it may actually have a positive effect and even prompt purchase of the actual good when it's not available immediately. And also expanded into things such as clothes, medicine, auto parts, and toys, and talked about the dangers, which I think are legit. For like toys and stuff, we've had like a lot of like lead toys from China and that kind of stuff. And but it also talks about things like fake aircraft parts, which is crazy because we've had outsourcing of our aircraft maintenance. So all the pleas for help, and they need to be rescued. All these copyright holders, when they're the ones who basically exploiting us, using advertising and placement in their movies, and also promoting mostly degenerate stories and stuff. And this is why they try and rely on things like taking internships and recruiting kids, like the WB's done, to issue takedown and infringement notices and stuff. So I mean, this piracy stuff is just crazy. It's just being used to no end.
From The Economist, more on copyright and wrong, why the rules on copyright need to return to their roots. It's an article discussing where copyright came from originally. 1709 law, which was passed in Parliament. It allowed books to have 21 years for books that were already in print. It was 14 years for new books, and an additional 14 years of copyright if the author was still alive when the first term ran out. And then after that, the material would enter the public domain so that anyone could reproduce it. And in America, they've had everything changed. We now have people that have copyright holders up to 95 years of protection, which is often called the Mickey Mouse Protection Act, because it's used by Disney, obviously, a lot. And basically goes over where copyright came from, the original intent, which was to make sure people didn't, have ideas stolen from them, and then that other people profited off something someone else had thought of. The idea was not to withhold knowledge and withhold news and information from people. That's never been the intent of copyright, and if it ever was, would frankly violate the First Amendment and freedom of the press and freedom of speech.
Next up from Infoworld.com, critic reject Comcast throttling deal. Some critic is saying to opt out of a petty $16 maximum settlement, which amounts to 50 cents a month, for the service that came from Comcast, where their bandwidths and stuff were basically dithered away into other things to prevent people from accessing the full potential of the bandwidth. And if people reject the settlement, this individual says, that they are freed from restrictions of the settlement and they can sue independently and join another action.